Hello, and welcome to one of the White Album 2 bonus side stories. This is After the Festival, Setsuna's 30 Minutes. Now, this is a relatively short side story as far as the WA2 side stories go. It's about right after the school festival, in the time where, of course, Kazusa ended up kissing Haruki, and then Setsuna ended up witnessing this and kind of panicking about it before taking him for herself. So it's a pretty important junction in the whole WA2 story as a whole. And this is interesting because it gives us some more insight into both Kazusa and Setsuna's mindsets during this time. So let's go ahead and start. Seriously, you're so boring. What's wrong with you? It's like you're asking for it. At that moment, Kazusa leaned forward a bit. Her long black hair spilled over her shoulder, covering Haruki's face. That instant, when their two faces overlapped one another completely, Setsuna, watching through the gap in the door a few meters away, burned the image into her eyes. Ah. Kazusa's voice, which could be taken as a sign of lament or a cry of pain, reached Setsuna's ears clearly. Sorry, Kitahara. I kissed you. Oh, it's such an intense moment, and it's just so crazy that we don't really get her full thoughts until later on, all the way in Dakota, when she was like, I was the first one, yelling about it. But here it's happening in live time. At the same time, her feelings, which had been as flushed as her body, began to run wild. It's your fault, got it? Because she had witnessed the feelings of her best friend. No, her closest friend, who had taken a step toward being her best friend. No, it's not. I'm sorry. I'm the worst. Because she had had a brush with Kazusa's unbelievably girlish emotions. So pretty short and sweet, right? The title of the story is Setsuna's 30 Minutes. So all that this story is going to end up encompassing is just a period of 30 minutes. But it is an incredibly important 30 minutes for this trio. This sets us up for the whole rest of the game. So let's continue on with part 1. Haruki-kun? A few minutes later, in music room number 2, which alone seemed to have been completely forgotten in the excitement of the school festival. Haruki-kun. Setsuna stood waiting in front of Haruki in the same posture Kazusa had taken a short while earlier. The last rays of the setting sun shone weakly in through the window. But in all likelihood, that glow would vanish within the next 10 minutes, its existence buried in darkness. Haruki didn't notice Setsuna's stare in the least. If this guy just wouldn't have been such a heavy sleeper, you know how much drama would have been avoided? But he's just... Okay, well, to be fair, he didn't sleep, at all a few days before the festival. None of them did. But that's the thing, none of them did. But that was only natural. After all, since yesterday, or for the past several days more likely, he had been exerting himself with no sleep, polishing his guitar playing, helping Kazusa recover from her sickness, and encouraging Setsuna. However, he wasn't the only one who didn't notice Setsuna there. The one who just now had flown from the classroom. The one who had nestled up to Setsuna this morning, sleeping. Toma-san. If only she would have noticed Setsuna. I mean, that would have been a whole other can of worms, a whole big drama if she had known that Setsuna saw her, right? At that time. But she didn't because she was panicking. She hadn't noticed Setsuna because she was deeply agitated, because she was focused solely and heavily on a single feeling. Because, unexpectedly, she wasn't that strong, as she had said. Perhaps because she just didn't care about Setsuna at that moment. That's not right, Toma-san." The remark she had murmured a moment before came out again, with stronger feeling this time. She resented Haruki sleeping there next to her without a care in the world. He really has no idea how important this moment is, and he literally sleeps through it. Like, that's crazy. But she realized that that was probably exactly what Kazusa had been feeling a few minutes earlier, and felt a rush of sympathy, together with an agitation that was even more complicated and intense. At this moment, Setsuna knew how Kazusa was feeling. Because they had slept next to each other this morning. Because, having tired of arguing, they snuggled up next to each other, with each other, and slept like best friends. Their hearts had connected with one another then. Even if it had been concerning a single boy, they had confirmed their friendship with one another, and numerous other feelings as a result. Why? Why now? Well, to be fair, they just got over a really, really big goal that everyone had been working towards, and now that all that adrenaline is out, it's the perfect time to have a confession. But half a day had passed. Within that half a day, the balance Setsuna had built up between the three of them had abruptly collapsed. It wasn't Kazusa's fault. It wasn't Haruki's fault, and it certainly wasn't Setsuna's fault, but it had been her mistake. There was no lie in the way Kazusa felt then. She clearly meant to treasure her friendship with Setsuna. She wanted to accept Setsuna as her best friend, but she hadn't been able to switch the order of priority between friendship and love. This is because of me. Even though there was no liability in it, Setsuna accepted the blunder as her fault. She was in the wrong for forcing such an unreasonable demand. It had been unreasonable for her to ask for a relationship as best friends who share feelings for the same person. I don't think that's true. I mean, well, okay. It is kind of rough, especially in high school when everything feels kind of like life or death. Being best friends with someone and then having a crush on that same person is a little bit rough. If that love was never to reach anyone, Setsuna's wish probably could have been granted. If it was never to reach anyone, then they could have talked to each other about their feelings for him, ridiculed each other for feeling so strongly, envied, shared, laughed, raged, cried, and steadily deepened their friendship as two girls. Deepened their yearning for the boy. Which usually works out if you have a crush on someone that's like way above your league, right? Like maybe like Setsuna but as a boy, you know, like the school idol, but the guy, good at sports, good at classes, because then they could just have a crush on them together and it's like more like a fantasy. But where they are now, they are so far above Haruki's league that it's like, well, either of them could get him if they tried. And that's harder to share with a friend. They could have enjoyed what Setsuna called their middle school love as much as they liked. But ironically, the one they loved was within arm's reach of both of them at this point. Because he faced girls, faced everyone, straight on. Because he spoke to these two in particular in an especially honest, unaffected manner. No, maybe she was just making excuses. In reality, there may have been a tiny difference in the way he treated the two of them, but Setsuna herself certainly had a chance. Well, that's true enough, yes. I've made up my mind. But Setsuna cut her reasoning off before it could progress any further. She didn't want to reach a conclusion she didn't want to know. She would rather... I can give up on Haruki-kun. I'm going to support Kazusa. Which, as we all know, absolutely does not happen. So, interesting that she had the thought, and good for her for supporting her friend, but it doesn't last long. That's a Spoiler alert, but it doesn't last long at all. So let's head into the next part. The room was perfectly shrouded in darkness. Through the still open window, she could hear a faint noise from the schoolyard. The general attendees had set off for home, and all that remained were likely students who were busy making preparations for the final day of the high school festival. But Setsuna didn't turn her attention to that outside state of affairs, instead continuing to gaze at the peaceful, sleeping face before her. This is fine. Kazusa and Haruki-kun can keep getting closer. They can become boyfriend and girlfriend, step by step. Just focusing on the whereabouts of her own feelings. I guess slowly taking time is good, and trying to understand your own feelings, although Setsuna's a little bit frazzled. The problem here also is that now she feels like she's on a time limit, right? Now she feels like she's running out of time for the trio, and she has to make a decision very quickly. That's the problem here. It'll be fine. If it's these two, Haruki-kun promised me. He said he would never shut me out. Desperately searching for common ground between the three of them. For her own ground. For her own ground? I feel like it could be good, but I guess I can understand the meaning still if it's ground. Maybe Toma-san doesn't like me that much. Maybe she's just trying to be friends with me because of Haruki-kun. But that's fine too. I know she'll do everything he tells her. She might complain, but she'll put in the effort for sure. For him. She'll endure. She'll keep getting along with me like she has been because she really, truly loves him. She loves him so much that just having him next to her kept her from being lonely. Well, I guess. She's still very, very lonely. But the difference between Kazusa and Setsuna right now is that Kazusa really doesn't have anybody else. So to Setsuna, it's like, oh, like Haruki's all she has. She is so dedicated to him. Setsuna is too, but Setsuna also has her family and some friends. So it feels a little different, the loves that they share for Haruki. But honestly, they're in the same boat. After spending a little while longer, during which nothing moved but the clock, Setsuna finally dropped the hand she'd been holding up, letting it fall to her knee. Chasing the reason for her hand having been there out of her head. I'm okay with us staying a trio. No, that's actually exactly what I want. So it's okay if Toma-san dates Haruki-kun. He's been looking at her this whole time anyway. She has her own priorities. No matter how I might try to wedge myself in, that's not a bond I can win against. So... Oh, come on. She pressed her hand against her knee, slowly rose. But her body didn't want to stand up, and she scolded herself with some bewilderment. I should go home. Just leave Haruki-kun like this, and tomorrow I'll greet them both with a cheerful good morning. Haruki-kun will probably give an even friendlier good morning than before, because he's etched in the memories of our performance today. And Kazusa will respond with an even more awkward yeah than before, no doubt, because today she learned the feeling of his lips. What's wrong with me? That's absolutely jealousy. Oh my god. She learned the feeling of his lips. Which is true. Although it was kind of like a dead man's lips because he just wasn't moving or responding. And I'll look at how worried she's acting and laugh, chuckle, and make her anxiety even worse. Before long, she'll feel certain of the weirdness in the way I'm acting. No, maybe I should just come right out with it. I saw you last night, you know. This is no good. Then she'll turn beet red and look down. Maybe, just maybe, she'll be on the verge of tears. Yes, that could be a very fun thing to aim for in the future. The cool, dignified Kazusa Toma, looking so embarrassed that she wants to disappear. Yes, that would be absolutely adorable. Why? Now, what's interesting here in the way this is written is that if we look at the quotes, right, the quotes that stick out on the left, these are Setsuna's true thoughts. And then when we get to the italics, of course, these are also Setsuna's thoughts, but she's trying to make everything positive. She's trying to look on the good side of things and help herself get over it in this moment. So the two sides of her brain are kind of in conflict here, which is written in a really beautiful way, I think. They didn't come right out and say like, oh, she's conflicted. It's obvious that she's conflicted in this sense. Very cool. Why? To Toma-san, it might be completely unthinkable that she would be subjected to that. But, I mean, she brought it on herself. It's only natural that I would hassle her like that. Because she has no guiding principles. She lied to me this morning. A big lie, saying she didn't have anyone she liked. You didn't tell me. You refused to tell me, Toma-san. She didn't stop my falling for him. She didn't accept my declaration of war. At that moment, Setsuna finally acknowledged it. Yeah, this is kind of the first time she's actually getting mad at Kazusa now. Acknowledged that no matter how hard she tried, she wasn't going to be able to stand up. Acknowledged that her voice was shaking because she was clenching her teeth. Acknowledged that the droplets falling to the floor in front of her were blurring her vision. I could never beat you if you got serious, but why did you have to get serious now? Today of all days, on such a fun, happy day. This is the kind of moment that you want to freeze for a lifetime. Why would you move ahead? No. Setsuna's voice, tearful from sorrow, frustration, and anger, colored the silence of the music room. She could imagine well enough what would happen if Haruki woke up right now. She knew better than anyone, but she couldn't stop this eruption of emotion, small though it was. It's not small. She's very emotional. And her being like, oh, well, if only it wasn't today. But, like, she would have felt this way no matter what day it was. It doesn't matter what day it is. It's not fair, Toma-san. Why couldn't you have confessed to him sooner? You should have done it back when I could still withdraw. I would have pouted, complained, maybe even cried a little. I would have troubled you and Haruki-kun, causing you all kinds of worry. In the end, I would have recovered on my own, embraced you both, shocking you, and I could have snuffed out the tiny light of love that I was feeling. And no, why? Why? The reactions of her body wouldn't follow the voice in her heart. In fact, the more her body resisted, the more her body came to follow her body. Okay, wait. The more her body resisted, the more her heart came to follow her body instead. It's a weird sentence. I understand the translation they were going for, but in English it just sounds a bit weird. I'm crying. I'm crying because my dear friend followed through on her feelings. I'm crying right in front of my other dear friend. I'm crying, unable to feel happy for my two friends. And, I can't blame her for that. You can't blame her for not being happy for Kazusa and Haruki right now because she loves him too. And it's a bummer, right? Even if it's not like deep, deep love, it's still a bummer. Nobody can argue with that. As a result, I'm terrible, aren't I? I'm the worst. All she could do was loathe herself, heart and body both. Poor Setsuna. She's between a rock and a hard place right now. So, continuing on with part 3. Maybe it was someone's laughter echoing from another classroom somewhere. Maybe it was the sound of the engine of the mini truck that had entered the campus. Toma? Haruki, who had been dead to the world this whole time, nodded his head and slowly opened his eyes. After that, he looked blearily around the whole of the classroom, probably because what he was seeing now was a bit different from his recollection just before he fell asleep. For example, the light in music room number 2 had been redder, the room filled with a gentle melody. Guess she left. And she had been with him. Yeah, what a peaceful scenario to fall asleep to, and then you wake up and everything's completely different. Good morning. What emotion was it that led her to speak up, disrupting his distant, dreamy gaze as he pondered? Good morning, Haruki-kun, and nice work today. Setsuna? Not a bad thing to wake up to, of course. Even Setsuna herself didn't really know. All she knew was that she wasn't reflected in his eyes right now. All she knew was that her heart, or maybe her body, had responded automatically, not wanting to acknowledge that fact. Oh, what about class? Class is over. It's almost 6 o'clock. In other words, she actually knew full well. Already? Wow, I slept a while. Yeah, I got here half an hour ago. Yes, 30 minutes had passed since Setsuna arrived here. Why didn't you wake me up? I didn't want to. So, there's kind of the title of the whole story, 30 minutes, Setsuna's 30 minutes. Because within that 30 minutes, she encountered a problem. You know, I guess it's a problem. It's a problem for her anyway. She encountered a problem. She went over the pros and cons of the problem, and now she has come to her own resolution. So, Setsuna's 30 minutes, kind of a cute name. In that time, she had managed to keep herself from rubbing her reddened eyes, pressing them instead with her handkerchief to get them back to normal. She had had no reason to wake him up. You don't have to be that considerate. I know you're tired too. But I wouldn't be able to enjoy watching you sleep that way. It would have been a waste. What? What a creepy thing to say. That is such a creepy thing to say. If you're already dating someone and you're like, I love looking at you sleep, you look so peaceful. That's not really weird. But in this case, where they're really just friends still at this point, it's like, it's kind of weird. I think that's kind of weird. The beaming smile she was giving Haruki right now was nothing more than a performance. A desperate attempt to keep him from sensing the face she had been making just before. You're kidding, right? Tell me you're kidding. Hey, tell me that you're just messing with me. Nope. But Setsuna's gamble was more than sufficient to fool the groggy Haruki. And so, behind her impish grin and devilish words, she fell into a storm of violent self-loathing. Ah, man, my body hurts all over. You worked really hard today. The whole week, I mean. For lying to Haruki. For the fact that she might end up lying to Kazusa too. For acting frankly according to her own desires. Well, you also, The coat lying across Haruki's shoulders right now was an emblem of that. Did you put this here? Mom brought it. She said it was a change of clothes since I didn't go home yesterday. Oh, the whole time that Setsuna's acting like really cheerful and really happy right now, she is so conflicted inside. She is tearing herself up. She's feeling really guilty. And we don't see this in the introductory chapter. You know, at least the first time you play through it. So it's interesting to kind of come here and get a new perspective on what's going on. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. Haruki must have thought that she put it on him half an hour before. But that wasn't true. She had actually only just done it. Here, you can have it back. Sorry, this is what the guy is supposed to do. Because after Setsuna got here, she couldn't pay Haruki that much mind for a little while. She was crying, going to pieces, burning, and she completely forgot to sense the chill in the room. No, Haruki-kun, you've already done what the boy is supposed to do. The coat was just one part of her strategy. To make him feel indebted to her. To fool him into thinking she was a nice girl. After all, what she was about to do may well amount to an incredible breach of trust. Not nice in the least. Just for a split second, that dark thought flickered through her head. Now, you could read into this, and of course this is what the story is doing. It's reading into this and thinking like, oh, Setsuna is pretty manipulative at this point. But realistically, like, this is what you do when you have a crush on someone. You do something and you think, maybe this will make him like me. Maybe this will make him think I'm cool or think I'm smart. I don't think it's a dark thing to do. I don't think that's an evil thing to do at all. Now, making a move when she already knows Kazusa's in love with him is kind of a dark thing. That much I agree with. But as far as the story kind of wording it and being like, oh, she's kind of dark and evil. She's not a nice girl. I don't agree with that. You helped me be brave. Brave enough to stand on that stage, facing all those people, and still enjoy myself singing. I didn't do all that. After she slowly turned her back, she felt Haruki's hands on her shoulders, just as expected, slipping the coat onto her. Even as she rejoiced in things going according to plan, she felt all the more hatred of her own darkness. That was so much fun. It really was. But no matter how she might curse herself for being underhanded, curse herself for being cowardly, she couldn't stop playing this role. A girl still in a state of elation in the afterglow of the performance. I was so nervous about singing in front of people, but now that I've crossed that line once, I don't think I'll be able to stop. Because if she cried right now, it would ruin everything. Also, it'd be very confusing because Haruki would have no idea why. And how can you even explain that? Be like, oh, just really tired and overwhelmed from the day. Really, really happy. I guess you could kind of lie like that. But it's a lie, and lying is not a good thing to do. Yeah, I still remember how you looked, singing in the spotlight. But even if she gave up now, everything would have to break sooner or later. She pictured a dazzling light before her eyes, but couldn't see any light beyond it. Come to think of it, I didn't do any choreography or anything. That's trivial. No one cared. I can still hear them cheering. I don't think I'll ever forget how it sounded. If I shut my eyes, it's like I'm still dreaming. She wanted to remember the voices of praise, but all that came to her were Kazusa's voice, full of grief and wonder, and her own voice, full of deep resentment. Think you want to do it again then? I'm nothing big, but with you and Toma, we could probably play an even bigger event. Good thinking, good forward thinking, and then the bombshell is dropped. Hey, Haruki-kun? You'll stay with me forever, right? Oh my god. That's such a big thing. That's such a big question. This question should never have been asked before this, after this. I get it. They're in high school and they think they're going to be with each other forever. But nobody wins from this question. Nobody wins. Literally, until you're ready to propose marriage, this question should not be a thing. So, in order to escape from the light and sound that cornered her, Setsuna strayed down the path that she knew was worst. There you go, just pick the worst path. If you want me to. Also, what a coward's way out of that question. You're going to Hojo University? Humanities, right? Which department are you thinking about? Huh? Oh, well, I'm planning on politics and economics right now. Why not English Lit? No, I'm bad at English, relatively. Well, I'm bad at both politics and economics. Absolutely. It was a girl's special, spoiled selfishness. Triple S. With exactly the wrong timing. I mean, we don't have to force ourselves to be in the same department. We'll still be at the same school, so we can see each other every day. Every day is good, but isn't the amount of time each day also important? It was a boundary to exclude a certain person, as though he and she were the only two people in the world. Oh, that's not nice. Kazusa never purposely excluded Setsuna. So Setsuna now having thoughts about how this is a good way, I mean, we can assume these are her thoughts because it's written in the story. Purposely talking about something that would exclude Kazusa? Now that's a little unkind. That's a little rude. We'll already have plenty of lectures together in the general education course. Why rush that decision? That's a good point, I guess. She knew that she was going entirely too fast, that she was being incoherent. Instead of thinking that far ahead, we should make a promise for the immediate future. Once we've graduated, I want the three of us to do something together again. You, me, and Toma. Setsuna? Stay with me, Haruki-kun. Okay? Huh? Yeah? It's so awkward. So awkward. She had known from the start that she was acting differently from usual. Even so, she felt irritated with Haruki's inability to understand her incoherency. How dare you not understand me when I'm not making sense? After we've started college, into our second year, third year, even if our departments are different, Setsuna, even if I have to repeat a year and end up under you, I don't think you're going to have to repeat a year. Why did he insist upon taking such a vague attitude? Why couldn't he scold her for being ridiculous? And if that were impossible, why couldn't he just reject her? Really, she knew from the start that Haruki couldn't possibly do anything like that, and agonized over what on earth must be wrong with her, seeking something so unreasonable. Hey, it's okay. I'm going to turn the lights on. No! In the midst of all that agonizing, Setsuna's hands grabbed Haruki before she realized it. Don't. We'll wake up from the dream. Her heart was running back and forth, but she couldn't keep her body from pushing ahead. Whew. And you know what's coming up. We all know what happens next. So, before we get into that whole mess of emotion and drama, we're going to stop there for today. So, thank you so much for joining me on this part of One of the White Album 2 bonus stories, Setsuna's 30 Minutes, and I'll be back with the next part shortly. Until then, hope you take care. See you.